Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to completely demystify one of the absolutely most fundamental concepts in chemistry, the limiting reactant. Think of this as a cinematic masterclass straight from Dr. Chem that's designed to totally transform how you view chemical equations, laboratory yields, and, honestly, even the world around you. So let's kick off this masterclass by looking at something super relatable, a simple grilled cheese sandwich. You've got 40 slices of cheese and 16 slices of bread. Now you might be wondering, why on earth does the chemistry of this sandwich matter to the survival of our planet? Well, it might sound like a massive stretch to connect a quick kitchen snack to the survival of species, but stick with me. By the end of this explainer, you're going to see exactly how the rules governing this simple sandwich are the exact same rules dictating the biological and industrial limits of our entire planet.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the grilled cheese conundrum, from the kitchen to the lab.
To really grasp chemical equations, we first need to look at our recipe. It's simple. 2 slices of bread plus 1 slice of cheese equals 1 perfect sandwich. Now, if we look at our starting materials methodically, it becomes super obvious that our 16 slices of bread are going to run out way before our 40 slices of cheese. We are strictly limited to just 8 sandwiches. Think about it. If we actually tried to use all 40 slices of cheese, we would need 80 slices of bread. We definitely don't have that. But if we use all 16 slices of bread, we only need 8 slices of cheese, which gives us exactly 8 sandwiches. The bread literally stops our production line in its tracks.
Moving on to Section 2, defining the limiting reactant, the chemical translation.
Let's step out of the kitchen for a second and head into the laboratory. We're going to translate our sandwich ingredients into actual atomic terminology, because believe it or not, chemical reactions behave the exact same way as our lunch prep. Here's the formal definition. The limiting reactant, sometimes you'll hear it called the limiting reagent, is the reactant that is completely consumed when a chemical reaction is finished. In IB and AP chemistry, it's so important to remember that a balanced equation is essentially a promise about proportions. It's not just vaguely saying A and B make C. No, it's saying a very specific number of A particles and a specific number of B particles are absolutely required to make C. If you can't complete that required bundle of particles, the reaction just stops. Right there. There's no chemical magic trick to force it forward.
This brings up a really brilliant dynamic between our two chemical players, the limiting reactant versus the excess reactant. It's like a showdown. The limiting reactant runs out first, dictates the final yield, and leaves a grand total of 0 behind. That's our bread. On the flip side, the excess reactant is present in total abundance. It's just left over when the reaction stops, exactly like that pile of 32 slices of extra cheese just sitting on the counter. It simply cannot react without its partner.
Okay, Section 3, the mole ratio trap, beyond just fewest moles.
Now let's talk about the most dangerous trap students, and honestly, even seasoned lab techs, face all the time. It's judging a reaction entirely by its initial mole count. This is a huge pitfall. Just because you have a visually small amount of an ingredient doesn't mean it's the limiting factor. You can't just glance at 2 chemical quantities on a scale and instantly know which one limits the reaction. You absolutely have to divide the initial moles by the required stoichiometric ratio, those are the coefficients, in your balanced equation.
To put that into perspective, let's look at the classic reaction that makes water. 2 moles of hydrogen gas plus 1 mole of oxygen gas yields 2 moles of water. Okay, imagine we start with 4 moles of hydrogen and only 1 mole of oxygen. You might think, well, 1 is a much smaller number than 4, so oxygen must be limiting, right? Actually, yes. But not just because it's the smaller number. It's limiting because the recipe demands 2 hydrogens for every single oxygen. Our 1 mole of oxygen only needs 2 moles of hydrogen to fully react. That leaves us with a massive 2 moles of unreacted hydrogen just floating around doing nothing.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that when a reaction finally halts, you will always be left with exactly 0 moles of your limiting reactant. 0. It is completely consumed. It acts as the absolute mathematical boundary of your chemical process.
Let's dive into Section 4, calculating your chemical yield, the master method.
To totally avoid that mole ratio trap we just talked about, we have to follow a strict formulaic method. By executing these 4 precise steps, you take messy, real-world masses and transform them into clear comparative ratios. This unmasks the limiting reagent every single time. First up, you need the balanced equation. Second, convert all your starting materials into moles, because remember, atoms react by count, not by weight. Third, divide those starting moles by their respective coefficient in the balanced equation. And finally, step 4, the lowest resulting number tells you exactly which chemical is your limiting reactant. Easy, right? And once you find that limiting reactant, boom, you unlock what's called the theoretical yield. This is your ultimate finish line. It is the absolute maximum amount of sandwiches or chemical product you can possibly assemble before your supplies run dry. It's the gold standard that chemists use to judge just how perfectly a real-world experiment was actually executed.
Which brings us to Section 5, leftovers and excess reactants, the conservation of mass.
So we know our limiting reactant hits 0, but what actually happens to all those extra atoms from the excess reactant? The ones that didn't get to participate? Well, because atoms can't just be created or destroyed, a little rule known as the conservation of mass, your final beaker will always contain a mixture. Your reaction system breaks down into the final product you created, plus that chunk of unreacted leftover excess reactant, the 32 slices of cheese. It doesn't just magically vanish, it literally just sits there, chemically unchanged.
Now, here's a trick question that pops up on advanced exams all the time. Does adding more of the excess reactant change our theoretical yield? The answer is a resounding no way. If you double the excess hydrogen while the limiting oxygen stays exactly the same, your yield won't budge an inch. You simply cannot force more product into existence. You're just creating a larger pile of leftovers in your beaker.
Let's look at the big picture in Section 6, stoichiometry in the real world, from test tubes to the planet.
Let's zoom way out from the laboratory bench. How does this simple stoichiometric rule command global industries and massive ecosystems? Because guys, this isn't just about passing a chemistry test. In pharmaceutical manufacturing, accurately identifying the limiting reactant is literally a matter of life and death. It guarantees batch consistency and prevents harmful chemical byproducts from forming. In industrial synthesis, chemical engineers will intentionally make the absolute most expensive rare chemical the limiting reactant. Why? To ensure every single precious drop of it is consumed, while they use something cheap like air or water as the excess. And out in nature, this very concept rules biological growth, deciding which populations thrive and which ones starve based entirely on scarce nutrients. If we trace this back historically, a 19th century German chemist named Justus von Liebig made a brilliant connection. He realized that whether you're assembling molecules or growing crops, the essential substance available in the smallest relative amount completely controls the growth of the entire system. He called it the law of the minimum. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, scientists figured out that massive destructive algal blooms in Lake Erie were happening because of a sudden excess of phosphates. Phosphates were the environment's limiting reactant for algae. Today, modern water treatment plants actively remove those phosphates from sewage to restore the natural chemical balance and stop ecological disasters.
So, as we wrap up this masterclass, I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative thought. If our environment is essentially a giant, complex chemical equation, what is the ultimate limiting reactant for human survival? Is it clean water, arable land, or maybe specific atmospheric gases? Next time you look at the natural world around you, try to identify the limiting reactants that are quietly, mathematically dictating the boundaries of life on Earth. Because once you truly understand the limiting reactant, you realize it's the invisible math running the universe. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the chemistry around you.